The historical community that I chose to research is the Shakers. Some background on the Shakers. In England in 1747, the first Shaker community was founded. This religious society originated in the English Quaker Church. The first Shaker community in the United States was formed in the 1780s. They first started with only 9 colonies that settled in New England. By 1805, 11 Shaker colonies had been established in New England. Also, in 1805, a group of Shakers traveled to Kentucky, where they found luscious land and established the town of Pleasant Hill. Most of their communities settled in Kentucky, Ohio, and the Northeast. By 1827, the society had 348 members and 6,000 acres of land. Ann Lee was the founder of the American Shakers, and they believed that she was the incarnation of the second coming of Christ. This community was named the Shakers for their frenzied dancing and behaviors during their religious services. The Shakers believed that men and women were created equally and that all their property was shared. They did not believe in procreation, thus members of this community had to be recruited. The Shakers believed in an effortless living, and communities were formed in the rural areas. Not only were these and all Shakers known for a simple life, but they were also known for their work, mainly with their hands. This simple life continued when the architects who built their houses and colonies decided on an effortless look to go with their simplistic lifestyle. They excelled in agriculture, furniture making, music, and architecture. The primary source that will be further evaluated and broken down in this assignment describes the amount of hard work, love, blood, sweat, and tears that went into settling the village. Like any new community, building a town from nothing takes significant work. Connecting all villages before and after, Shaker Nancy Rude describes the dedication that it takes to make this community the best it can be. Through burning sun and cold and heat, with violent hearts and weary feet, your watchword heavenward no retreat, we are building Pleasant Hill. Even with that significant work to set up these villages, will these communities be able to survive? The poem referenced above was found in the Shaker Village of Pleasant Hill Collection and Archives, catalog number 21. It is titled A Poem Dedicated to Pleasant Hill by Nancy Roop in 1904. This poem speaks to hard work and diligence of leading a life away from the outside world and becoming a part of this strict religious community. As previously stated, they were known for their simple living, but they were always creating valuable things to gain independence from the outside world. Many things they made still are beneficial today. Shakers were very hardworking people and productive people. They wanted their communities to thrive and missed all that they sacrificed for these new communities. Nancy Roop reiterates this hard work. You fell the trees with sturdy hands, a true united Christian band, gave up family, house, and land to build this Pleasant Hill. As you read this poem, you soon see the poem takes a turn in tone. It begins with the community coming together and sacrificing all in hopes of building in this prosperous village. The village has become stressful, and it does gain independence from the outside world. But why, after time, did the Shaker population begin to decline? The first secondary source I chose is the article Why the Legacy of the Shakers Will Endure by Joanne M. Pierce, professor of religious studies at the College of the Holy Cross. This article is published on January 18, 2017 in the journal The Conversation. Pierce wrote that she became interested in the Shaker community after her research in the area of Christian rituals. I chose this article because I enjoyed how it gave a history of who the Shakers were and gave some context about the decline of this community. Joanne Pierce's purpose for the writing this article is just that she wants not only to describe the history, traditions, and culture of the Shaker people, but also to point out some reasons why the Shaker community declined and is non-existent today. Pierce goes on to further detail about the lives of the Shakers. She describes how her followers dissolved their marriages and practiced strict celibacy, and lived in these communal villages. If one had children before joining these villages, the whole community raised the children. Shakers did believe in gender equality because of their fundamental belief that God was both male and female. The Shakers loved music, and just as we know, that is where they got their name. The Shakers practiced shaking and dancing during their worship services. The Shaker community thrived in the United States in the first half of the 19th century. More than 20 Shaker communities were housing some 6,000 members, concentratedly in New England and New York, but scattered in other places as far west as Kentucky and as far south as Florida. Pierce then brings the attention to the second half of the 19th century, when the decline started. Many things attributed to the fall, but Pierce highlights the primary cause of this decline. The rules were stringent. They rejected the outside world. They did not believe in marriage and believed in celibacy. Since celibacy was considered procreation couldn't create any new members. The communities had to rely on converts to keep their communities going. This was not easy. Given the beliefs discussed previously, the communities were aging with no new members, and the villages slowly closed. Another secondary source I have chosen is what a day is like for the Shakers. The article, The Shaker, Culture of Cleanliness, talks about how the Shakers lived their life. The Shakers lived in a large communal dwellings, and brothers and sisters shared the same room. Meals were taken communally in the dining room, and all followed a daily regimen that included prayer and labor. The sisters prepared the meals and did the community washing, ironing, sewing, and weaving, tended to the poultry, and produced goods for sale, including cloth, chair tapes, canned fruits, vegetables, medicine, herbs, and seed packets. This work was generally done in groups that rotated every month. The brothers worked on the farm, tending crops and cattle, hogs and sheep herds. Some worked in the tannery, and others in the mills and shops, where they made brooms, buckets, baskets, chairs, tables, etc. The work of the Shakers was consecrated labor, as a part of their worship and commitment to the God. My last secondary source in his article explaining the Shakers' worship life. The community meeting house was the center of the Shaker worship service every Sunday. Spontaneous dancing was a part of the Shaker worship until the early 1800s, and then it was replaced by choreographed dancing. Spontaneous dancing returned around the 1840s, but dancing was ceased during prayer by the end of the 19th century. George Meckham put an end to the dancing. He encouraged the Shakers to stop dancing because the United Society was overgrowing. Having so many unpredictable moving bodies in one place proved too chaotic. So now services consist of singing, hymns, testimonials, a short homily, and silence. My research question states, what led to the decline and what attributed to the decrease of the Shaker population? As my first secondary article explains, the Shaker population started to decline slowly in the 1860s. One of the main reasons the population started dropping was many people didn't believe the Shakers' religious views. As time passed, more people practiced other religions instead, such as Catholicism.